Welcome back, everyone, to the Daily Gold podcast. Today is Wednesday, May 22nd, 2024. Thank you so much for tuning in. And today I'm very excited because we have a new guest. He is Peter Krauth. Peter is one of the nicest guys in this industry, also one of the smartest, I should add. And Peter is the author of a new book, The Great Silver Bull. Great title. I completely agree, by the way. And he's publisher of the Silver Stock Investor. And Peter, as we get started here, I want to get your take on what you think is driving silver. I mean, it is selling off today, but it's had a heck of a run. It's really been outperforming gold recently. Touched 32 a few days ago. So, from your expertise, what do you think is happening in this market in the last few months? Who's buying? And just anything you want to educate us on.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for that. Appreciate the intro and the opportunity to give my thoughts. So I think silver is following gold. That is a big part of what explains the behavior recently. Gold has been very strong. It's been strong longer than silver has. And if you look at, let's say, the last sort of year or couple of years, but I think that there's a little bit of FOMO kicking in. People see gold at $2,400, and they're saying, wow, maybe I should get into gold. And they're thinking, well, all I'm getting is 1 ounce of gold for that kind of money. What what else can I buy? Silver is the natural alternative to that. And so people are noticing silver and starting to say, wow, for whatever an ounce of silver is, if you're buying a coin, an American Eagle, for example, or a Canadian maple leaf, let's say in US dollars, they're looking at, I don't know, 38, 40-ish dollars, something like that. That's a lot cheaper than an ounce of gold. So they can buy a lot of ounces of silver for 1 ounce of gold. And right now, if you look at the ratio, they're probably, even if you're looking at, buying actual coins and bars, you're probably somewhere around maybe 70 ounces of silver for an ounce of gold. So that's a big difference, and people feel like they're getting a lot more for their money. And so I think that's what's pushing silver in a big way. But then there's the whole industrial side of silver, which we can get into in a lot more detail. And I think that what is going on in the industrial side is really starting to drive demand and awareness as well in the silver market.
Okay, that's great, because one of my questions here is a perfect follow-up to that. Because when I'm researching the history, all the biggest moves in silver were basically after gold breakouts. So gold breaks out as this big move, and then it pulls silver higher. And, I looked at the last 10, 20 years. It seems like when silver goes up, it's high investment demand. When silver goes down, it's low investment demand. The other things don't matter. So I'm a skeptic on the industrial demand side. But Peter, this is why I have you on here.
Yeah, for
Tell
sure.
me why I am wrong. Tell me why it's going to be different now, and that industrial demand is it now, at least moving forward, is going to be a much more important driver of the price than it has been in the past.
Okay. So I'll agree with you that in the past and even in the future, the industrial demand will have a limited effect on the price. Now, what I mean by that is that I have a bit of a saying, which is that industrial demand provides a rising floor under the silver price. And then it's investment demand that kicks in and causes the volatility, the spikes, whether they be upside or downside. They are what drives the silver price in a much bigger way, in a much more, as I say, volatile way. And I think that, the industrial side has become more and more important. I follow, the silver market closely. And if you look at 10 years ago, it was barely 50%. Today, we're currently at about 60% of silver demand being industrial. Solar panels are a huge part of that. I think that the demand from solar is also being underestimated. Solar has now become 20% of all of the silver supply. Silver supply being about 85% mining, 15% recycling, about 1 billion ounces a year. So over 200 million ounces of silver a year go to solar panels alone. And that from 2022 to 2023 grew by 64%. It's been in the last few years consistently under represented or under how can I say, too conservatively forecast in terms of the growth. It's been tremendous. And if you look at what's happening in technology, in solar panels, we're going to just need more silver. We're not only producing more silver, more solar panels, but we're producing them in technologies that require more silver per panel. And so, yeah, I mean, we're going to just need more and more silver for solar, not to mention all of the other applications. So that's somewhat more predictable. Now, what I think could be driving silver, if I think that there is a certain portion of investment demand that has started to kick in, and that's what's driven. If you look at the silver price over the last, say, year or two, you clearly see a hockey stick formation where it was going like this. Let's say the top was, 28-ish, and then all of a sudden it just picked right up and just jumped and went from maybe in the last few months 25, 26 to 32. That's a huge jump in a matter of weeks almost. And so I don't think industrial demand is doing that. I think investment demand is doing that. That's why I say it's been following gold, which has been breaking out to new highs, 24, as I say, ish in US dollars. It's now in a clear bull market because gold is hitting all-time highs in all the major currencies. That is one big indicator of a new bull market. Silver, I believe the investment side of it is following that. But I had this sneaking suspicion that if the price of silver felt and looked like it was capped at, say, $28 or $30 for the last 4 years almost. It's been in this range. It's a wide range, but it's 22 to 28, 30-ish on the upside. It tested $30 twice, first in August of 2020, then in the silver squeeze in January of 2021, and then recently went up to 30, and it didn't take long. These triple tops usually don't work. You get a breakout. We had the breakout to beyond 30, about 32 and a half. And I think that part of it, definitely most of this breakout is investment, but I think there's been a big push that has come from the industrial side. Now, a couple of months ago, I was suspicious about how you could have this ceiling on the silver price if industrial demand just keeps pushing and pushing and pushing forward. You have the last 4 years, we're told we have structural deficits in the silver market. How can you not have the silver price break higher in this kind of environment where you have deficits, ongoing deficits? Like if you add the last 4 years of silver market deficits, you're at something like 600 million ounces. That's more than half of an entire year's supply of silver. So I started looking at the futures markets that have large silver inventories. I started looking at silver ETFs globally that have large silver inventories. And if you look at these two, what I call secondary inventories, they're down about 40% overall in the last 4 years. And so I had a suspicion that you had large industrial users getting their silver somewhere, silver that didn't need to be produced, that was already sitting in inventory, so they could actually go out and buy that silver, pay prevailing prices, and get the silver delivered without sort of pushing up demand and pushing the silver price higher. So look, to me, it's kind of a smoking gun. There's no absolute proof, but to see sort of 1 billion ounces come out of secondary inventories in the last 4 years, to see all the large silver futures exchanges drain silver, to see almost all the silver ETFs globally on balance lose hundreds of millions of ounces in their storage. I can only imagine a lot of that's getting consumed and going to industry, and that has been a source of silver without pushing the silver price higher. And then, I thought okay, how long can this go on? I'm assuming, and I'm making, an educated guess, maybe 12, maybe 24 months. And it's funny because when I came to that conclusion about 2 months ago, uh, like about a month ago, someone sent me a report by TD doing a similar analysis, showing the same charts of the futures exchanges of the ETFs, and saying, and I kid you not, the same conclusion: 12 to 24 months potentially of what we have
They,
left
they,
in this
they
kind of
stole they
market.
stole it from you. They stole it
I
from
hope
you.
so. I don't have any proof, but I hope so. Perhaps I like to think so. And yeah, they said 12 to 24 months before the game is over, and there's no more silver to drain from these secondary inventories, and that's it. It's over. Someone is going to buy a long futures contract, stand for delivery, go to an ETF where they hold the units and say, I want delivery. And someone's going to say, I'm sorry, force majeure. Here you go. I'm going to pay you out in cash. And that's it. And then that contract holder is going to scream and say, no, 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 I don't want the cash. I want the silver. I need the silver. And then we're going to hear about it. It's going to make front page news. It's going to make headlines, and we're off to the races. So that's what I think is going on.
Okay, yeah, thank you so much for that info. One follow-up I have, I don't know if it's elastic or inelastic. I'm confusing my Econ 101 terms, but
Yep.
because you think about uranium in the again, is it the elasticity or inelasticity where it
Right.
doesn't make a huge difference to the people
Right.
who need it if it's $200 a pound or $50 a pound. And I'm just
Right.
wondering for the industrial users of silver, 50 or $100 silver, like, does that make a huge difference versus the price today?
Right. So, that's a great point. To some extent, and in many applications, no, it will not make a huge difference. Naturally, they don't like it, and then it eats into their profits, but there's going to be a certain amount of tolerance, and they're going to pass on price increases in the price of their product to some extent, because silver is a small portion of in many of its applications. If you think of electronics, things like on-off switches, like printed circuit boards, it really is not a huge portion, despite being indispensable. So yes, they need it. Can they pass the cost on? Yes, to some extent. And I think that that's what's going to go on for a while. We're going to start to see some of the electronics have to pass their price increases on from silver, but it's going to be when we get to a point of maybe it's 50, maybe it's $100 silver, that they're going to say, okay, this is really, really hurting now. And they will still have no choice. They'll still have to pass the price on. But then the consumer is going to really start to say, okay, that's where I kind of, that's my top. I'm only so willing to pay so much for a new phone or for a tablet or for whatever it might be. It's all over the place in an EV, for example. EVs use up to twice as much silver as internal combustion engine vehicles do. And so it's not as big as solar, for example, but it's growing. And at a 40 or $50,000 price tag on a car, you can hide the silver price, even if it goes to 100 or $150, a lot more easily than you can in some kind of small electronic. But we're getting to that point. It's going to start to hurt. That's really what it comes down to.
Okay, now moving on from that, I want to talk about, I didn't mention this to you, but China and de-dollarization. So we know China's leading the de-dollarization away from the dollar. That's impacting the gold market. What kind of impact is China having on the silver market? I mean, does the de-dollarization, does that have um, in any impact on silver, like specifically aside from just the fact that it's good for gold and it'll pull silver higher?
Yeah, I mean, I would say it may. That's a tough one. Really hard to say. I have not read or heard of anything specific that does. What I would say is that there are applications, and if you think about perhaps east versus west kind of thing, just to kind of simplify things, if east starts to say, well, we need to be more self-reliant when it comes to all kinds of things. One of the interesting aspects is defense. And there are no hard numbers for good reasons because, a lot of this stuff is top secret. But, some of the best estimates, for example, of one great example is a Tomahawk missile, is that Tomahawk missile might take somewhere around 500 grams of silver, per missile. So one guy did some research on this and figures that it's about 500 grams of silver. If you look at the number, you multiply that by the number of missiles that the US has, and then you look at the fact that they upgrade the missiles, that they replace the missiles, that they blow up the missiles, that they sell them to allies. Uh, they can't be the only ones that are using silver in these kinds of ways. So if you circle back to the East, that perhaps is saying, well, we've got our own defense. And I haven't even talked about all the communications aspects of defense. All of the telecommunications that they use. They use tracking, they use radar, they use, you name it. All of this equipment has to have silver because it's such a great conductor. So the West isn't the only side using this stuff. The East has to be using it as well. It would not surprise me if we found out eventually that you're starting to see some hoarding going on in the East because they are getting concerned about having access to silver supplies. So I would imagine there's some of that going on, but for sure there's a lot of what you mentioned, which is the fact that it follows gold. It's clear that because the US weaponized the dollar, central banks around the world are buying gold, and that has a secondary effect on silver. It's pushing up silver as a bit of FOMO. And then you've got, like I say, potentially this this concern about access to supplies for strategic uses of silver, and it's considered a critical mineral in some jurisdictions. So there's certainly that aspect to it as well.
What about just like the retail investor or the retail trader in China? And maybe I could throw India in there as well. Do we know anything about, I mean, recently, do those, individuals, again, retail traders, investors, I mean, do they have an affinity for silver? Are they buying a little bit more? I mean, any thoughts you have on that subject?
Sure. So, absolutely, the East is very much better educated than the West is on gold and silver, precious metals in general. There's a big appetite. There's a bigger appetite in India historically for silver than in China. I mean, I do talk about in the book how China was used silver as their money for a long time, and that led to all kinds of issues because you had the opium wars, and it was currency for them. So a lot of shenanigans happened when you consider that. The Indians, as I say, they have a big affinity to silver. They're big consumers of silver for jewelry, for silverware. They're savvy in the sense that they buy when they feel that it's gotten cheap, when it's backed off, and they sell or they stop buying when they feel that the price has gotten a little bit rich. And if you look at what happened in 2022, India was a huge buyer of both silver jewelry and silverware. And when you see what happened last year, silver purchases from India for, again, both jewelry and silverware backed off tremendously. And some people will say, oh, that's bearish. And it actually is not. It's actually closer to 2021 levels, which were more normal. It's just that 2022 was such an outsized year in terms of silver purchases in India that it's an anomaly, and it's come back more to normal. But that just goes to show you how much physical buying of bars and coins, of silver jewelry, of silverware, and in different parts of the world, the East and the Southeast Asians are very silver savvy, and they will buy silver as a hedge, a chaos hedge, an inflation hedge. And I say watch for them in the future to contribute to future spikes in silver price. There's no question that that's going to come back, and they will be big drivers of it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the East, I mean, they know about currency depreciation much better than we do, although we are about to find out. Um, okay, yeah,
Agreed.
one more follow-up on China. So that I see tweets about the price of silver in the Shanghai exchange. It's 35 or it hit 36, it's 34. I mean, as investors in the West, I mean, does that matter for us? Can that be a leading indicator? I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, it should be. We should pay attention to it. It doesn't maybe affect us directly right now, but I do believe that pricing power is moving east. East is buying precious metals. They're buying them from someone. They don't produce all of them, uh, or they don't produce all of it. So sure, they may be keeping a lot of what they produce, but they're also consuming a lot of it industrially as well, and so they don't get that back. But if they're getting beyond what they produce, they're getting a lot of it from the West. So they're being the smart ones. They're buying it, we're selling it. And the bigger they become buyers, the more they have pricing power. And I believe that is definitely transferring east. So if their spot prices are considerably above ours, and the volumes are shifting towards the east, we do need to pay attention, because I think that that's going to eventually be reflected in our spot prices as well.
Okay, just a couple more for you, and I'll let you go. So, Peter,
Sure.
turning to the book, um, when writing the book, is there something that you discovered about silver that just really surprised you?
There is one thing that I had no clue about, and I've heard a couple of times since, and that is that, and this is just on the industrial side, so it's kind of, I mean, it's anecdotal for us, but it's a fact, that it's called cloud seeding, and a form of silver, it's some kind of oxide, is used to seed clouds and help make it rain, basically. So you can drop this product into clouds, and it'll help create rain. Sometimes it's used to help avoid rain if you want to try to get the rain to be released from clouds in a certain area, so it will not rain in another area. So yeah, cloud seeding, silver is used in cloud seeding, which is tremendous, which, if we get better at that, maybe that's a way to help certain areas to counteract, things that are happening on the climate side. Um, um, the interesting part about that too is, from the research I did, the residue, which is, some sort of form of silver that falls to Earth, is apparently, is environmentally safe. So whatever they're doing with that, the residue that falls does not affect anyone or plant or animal life or anything like that. So it's not something that we would need to be concerned with. So yeah, I thought that was a really, really interesting fact that, silver can be used to make it rain.
Uh, so is that being used in like desert places in North America and around the world? Like, are they're actually using that cloud seeding? Places that
Yeah,
are
I
really
mean,
dry that like have droughts that really badly need rain?
I honestly don't know how to what extent it's being used. I know that it's something that they know works. If they're using it or not, let's say in certain places to try to counteract dryness, I'm not aware of that. Like I say, I don't want to venture farther than what I know. I know that it exists. Apparently, it works, and but the extent to which it's being used, I honestly do not know.
Okay. Yeah, but that's super interesting.
Yeah.
I hope this isn't too similar to the last question, but just tell us something, anything about silver that we don't know.
Okay, well, silver has been used as money longer than gold. From the research, yeah, so about 5,000 years. So before gold was used, and there was one point during, I believe about or maybe 3,000 years ago, there was at one point in Egypt where silver was valued equal to gold. It was difficult or difficult enough for the Egyptians to find silver, that they valued it at the same level as they did gold. So for that reason, again, the research that I've gathered says that over history, because silver has been used as money for a longer time than gold, and because it's has a lower value per weight, has been used in more sort of daily transactions, and because of that, has represented more transactions on a volume and on a value basis over history than gold has. So it's been more common money basically than gold has throughout history. So it's been true everyday money for the longest time. And one sort of last point on that is that we're really in an experiment. It's only since say 50 or 100 years that we're on a true fiat global standard. That has not really happened ever before. There has always been at least somewhere in the world where you've had precious metals or something backing, even if it's paper money at that point in time. So, in the US, for example, since say the 60s or 70s, that there's no physical gold or silver that's backing our money. That's quite interesting. So we're living in an experiment. My guess is it's not going to play out all that well. So history, if you look at history, history tells us the sane and the safe way to run and back money is with some kind of precious metals, even if it's not 100%. It provides a lot of stability, and some interesting research I came across not long ago talks about how in the 19th century, so in the 1800s, you had a gold standard more or less around the world. And what was interesting is that a lot of the true groundbreaking inventions came during that time period. And what we've had, you can look at the 20th century and say, well, we've had all sorts of things, but true sort of 0 to 1 versus 1 to 100 kind of inventions where you came with true, as I say, groundbreaking but revolutionary ideas came in that century and came during a gold standard. So it's not because you've got easy access to money that you cannot have true invention and true creativity and true improvement basically in ideas and in living standards. So we have a lot to learn from history. There's no question about it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Just going back to what you said about the silver being used as money. Here in the US, weren't we on a silver standard until I want to say like around the Civil War or after
That's
that
right.
point?
Yeah, in fact, I think there was a bimetal standard at one point as well. So no, there's no question that silver has been part of US's history, and then in its money, until the 1970s. So we have a long, long, long history with silver and with gold, and people just sort of need to ask themselves why is that? Why was it, and why? And think about the fact that during the 1800s, when you had most of the world on a gold standard, I'm not saying it was perfect, nothing is, but there were much fewer conflicts, they were much shorter, and they were a lot less bloody. So that was because the countries on the standard, which was most advanced and developed countries at the time, were basically had their spending reined in and limited by what they were able to tax, which was, as I say, highly limited. So there was no appetite within their citizenry to go out and have long and drawn out wars against others, because that had to be funded somehow. So that made for much better peace and a much healthier and a very, very rapidly growing standard of living. So as I say, we really should look back on that, and there's a tremendous amount to be understood and to be learned.
Yeah, absolutely. Peter, thank you so much for coming on today. Before I let you go, please tell our audience where they can go to follow you. Also, where they can go to subscribe to your newsletter and buy your book.
All right. Well, I appreciate that, Jordan. So the book, The Great Silver Bull, you can find that on Amazon. It's available in print, in Kindle, and as well as an audiobook version. So that's easy to get to. That really is the overview of silver and the opportunity in silver. And I talk about everything from economics and silver's role in economics to, the nuts and bolts of the silver market, what drives silver, and ultimately how to invest and then eventually sell silver and silver investments, because we're going to get to a point where it's going to run up so much that you don't want to be left holding the bag. You want to cash in, you want to benefit from it, and so I give you some signposts to kind of follow to look for when we might reach that point. Then there's my newsletter, which is what I feel is more of a real-time way to follow the silver market. So silverstockinvestor.com, that's where my newsletter is. At that website, you can go there, poke around, look at that, and subscribe, of course. It's available on right now it's on a monthly or annual basis. It's going to soon switch to a quarterly or annual basis. And yeah, I mean, that's how, as I say, to follow the silver market real time. I put out all kinds of proprietary research on silver. I have a portfolio. As far as I know, it's the only newsletter that focuses exclusively on silver. It's an entire portfolio that runs everything from physical silver and silver ETFs all the way down to junior explorers and everything in between, developers, large producers, even royalty companies, and all of that. So yeah, that's the best way to follow. I'm on Twitter. I'm pretty active on Twitter, now X, and I'm on LinkedIn, so people can follow me there.
All right, Peter, thank you so much for coming on today and sharing your wisdom. I hope we could do this again later this year and check back with you and see how things are developing in the silver market.
Thanks so much, Jordan. I really appreciate it. And I must say, I tremendously enjoy your work as well. I think you do some fantastic stuff on the technical side as well. And I encourage people to follow your work.
Thank you so much, Peter.
Pleasure.
Thank you for tuning into the Daily Gold podcast. For more interviews, editorials, and analysis, log on to TheDailyGold.com. And for premium coverage of precious metals and the best junior mining companies, visit TheDailyGold.com/premium.